Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Harris Bard for Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London, and in today's video I'm going to be doing something slightly different for the channel, where I'm going to be showing you around our bespoke brand new tropical fish house which we've built over the past year, so that I can show you the ideas behind it, what we do a little bit differently to some other places, some things that we might be trying to implement in future, and just to give a sense of where we're at Pond Life Aquatics in Tropical Fish London at the end of 2024. And hopefully, if I'm still making videos this time next year, we'll be able to look back and see what we've changed in that time. Let's get into it. So one thing that we do slightly differently here at Tropical Fish London and Pond Life Aquatics is that our entire fish room, the idea behind it is that we are trying to show different continents of fish and keep them specifically with other species that are in their continents. Now, I'm not actually aware of any other fish house in London or in England for that matter that does things this way. And the reason we wanted to do that here is so that we could have some sort of educational basis for when people come into the shop and they look around. Sometimes when you go into other fish houses, you will find that everything will kind of just be placed in together, and there's nothing wrong with that, particularly when people are just trying to use the absolute most amount of their space they can to stock the greatest variety of fish that they can. And that has its ups and downs. Going for just the vast amount of fish that a lot of places have, they are able to have a huge variety, which is obviously beneficial for the customer. What we wanted to do at Pond Life and Tropical Fish London, because we don't have the biggest amount of space, we wanted to try and create something a little bit different. Instead of just going for huge quantities of fish pushed into small tanks on massive systems, we have gone continent by continent, and we have a very small selection of well-kept species that we're proud to keep. I'm not saying that other shops are not proud of what they keep, obviously they are, and I'm not bad-mouthing anyone, this is just the way we do things here. But I think there is something quite beneficial for the customers when we can say every single fish here in this section is kept in one continent. So for example, when you first come into our fish house, on the left-hand side as you come in, we have our South America ring. And what we find is quite beneficial of this is 90% of the things that you find, and particularly when it comes to nano aquaria, which we try and specialize in, so these things can be kept together. So your red phantom tetras can very happily be kept with your neon tetra. Obviously most tetras will get along, but you also have your Poecilia reticulata, your guppies, which if you're interested in how to keep guppies effectively, I just did a video on that last week. We have our swordtails up in this section over here. We also keep our Otocynthus affins. We also keep quite an extensive range of different L-cats, including some cool things like Snow White and Sistrus. We find particularly when we have younger people coming into the shop, we're able to show them effectively what different ecosystems exist in the world specifically based on their continent. We're not saying this is the only way to do things, but we think that it is pretty unique that we space things out the way we do, and we're quite proud of the way everything gets along. It's also kind of different about us to, I know some other fish stores do this, particularly in London. We individually filter every single one of our tanks. So none of our tanks are on a system. We do have separators within some of them so that we can try and keep, for example, in our guppy tanks, we have a separator between different colors just so it's easier for us to catch out of. But each of the tanks as a whole is individually filtered. Nothing we do is kept on the system, which means that if, unfortunately, we have any sort of issues with health of the fish, which I'm quite happy to say that with the testing and servicing that we regularly do here, we don't have that many issues. But when we do, we can isolate it. And when we do treat our fish, we don't have to spread it throughout an entire system. So that's just a massive benefit to having individually filtered aquariums. We just want to focus on getting the species that we do have in the best possible condition before we sell them on. In the future, hopefully we will be doing some more bespoke soft water species, but that will probably be within the next year, and we're going to have to figure that out as we go along. So I personally have quite a lot of experience in keeping quite hard to keep gourami species like licorice gourami or samurai gourami. It's just that little bit more difficult to keep them on scale, healthily and happily. Which leads me on to how I'll be showing close-ups of tanks throughout while I speak, but you can see that we try and keep plants in every single one of our aquariums. This isn't something that you regularly see throughout a lot of stores, because it makes it a lot more difficult to keep things clean and keep things easy to catch out of. But we think it's more beneficial for the customers to be able to see that keeping a live plant will keep fish happy and healthy. And even if it's a bit of a pain for us to have to catch out of, and we have to get used to being able to fish around plants and ornamentation and places for the fish to hide, we feel that for fish's overall health, we have a duty of care to keep them in the best possible way. And because we don't have the quickest turnover of any store, we think it's super important here at Pond Life to keep fish with as much natural supplementation as we can, whether that means we have botanicals in tanks in the form of almond or catappa leaf, or plants on wood. Lots of guppy grass, Java fern, easy to keep plants. We're not keeping anything crazy or any aquascapes in every single one of our tanks. But as you can see behind me, we do keep plants in pretty much every single aquarium that the fish won't absolutely destroy them. Moving on to the next continent, we have Asia. And I think we have a really great little selection of Asian fish. It spans the entirety of this side of the room. We go from all different sorts of places in Southeast Asia and Asia throughout, where we have things like clown loach, honey gourami, we have long-finned cherry barbs. We even have some kind of oddball species where we try and keep up to date with things that have been talked about, specifically in things like practical fish keeping, where we'll keep things like lipstick gobies and things that maybe you don't find en masse in a lot of other shops, but we try and keep some special little finds and keep them as well as we possibly can. We may not have a massive array of specific colors of different things, but we have a really nice bespoke collection of specifically selected and sometimes odd and rare species of fish. For example, right now we've got some emerald eye rasbora, which I personally have read about on a few occasions. I know I've read about them in practical fish keeping, but I don't think I've actually ever seen them in person. We try and keep things like that in at any given time. I'm trying to think what other kind of oddball species we have in at the moment. Not oddball, but something that's a little bit different. Obviously, we've got our lipstick gobies, which I mentioned previously. We also sometimes keep things like Asian rummy nose, which are Sorbois resplendens, which are a relatively rare species of fish, where usually people know about rummy nose tetra, but Asian rummy nose have this almost like bluish tint to them, or red nose. I'll see if I can get a good shot of them, but I don't think I've actually seen them in any other store. I'm super proud of the different selection of fish, and I'm proud that we don't, although we do keep quite a significant amount of stock, we don't overstock our aquariums, I don't think, to the point where sometimes you'll go into some chain stores in particular and they'll throw in as many fish as they can into a particular tank. And obviously that's to try and keep their profit margins high, because when you buy in fish on bulk, it does end up cheaper. But here we'd much rather get in a smaller selection of fish. We try and keep the pricing as competitive as possible, but we also try and keep them at a higher standard than most chain stores would be able to achieve because of our individual filtration and the extensive testing and care that we keep to our fish. Because we have a small space, the small selection, we spend a lot more time taking care of each tank than I think if you had a system where you would just be able to water change the whole thing and it would take a very short amount of time. We spend hours every single day servicing at least one continent of fish, and we try and keep it on a cycle where we test, we make sure that there's obviously no deads, and if there is, we extensively test within those aquariums to make sure that there's nothing wrong. And then we go on to clean the filters, do a water change, and dose with anything that will make the situation more under control. And I think it leads to some really happy and healthy fish. Like, for example, these long-tailed red cherry barbs are just absolutely stunning. And we managed to get colors and beauty out of our fish that I think a lot of people only get in private care. We do at the end of our fish room have our goldfish aquariums. Obviously, goldfish are an Asian species, so this is where we have them. We'll hopefully be expanding our range to another room we keep our tropical room at about 25 to 26 degrees. That's not through heating, that's because everything's filtrated either through an external filter and an air heater, and this room is so well insulated with fiberglass flooring and really, really thick walls that the heat stays in, which is ideal for most species, and it's absolutely fine for goldfish. However, we do find that for temperate species, so like our rainbow shiners or our fancy goldfish, we'd much rather be keeping them probably at a lower temperature. So when we build a new room, we'll be moving those and our other temperate species into that space. It won't be as well insulated as this room, but it then means we'll be able to expand our Asian range even further. So we'll hopefully be keeping some larger species of Asian fish in the future. But for now, we've got a really beautiful selection of healthy and happy fancy goldfish. Really chuffed with that. One thing that I feel like we do slightly differently here, particularly, is our Simon's fighting fish range. I find that a lot of shops that we go to have fighter barracks, which I understand why fighter barracks seems like a good thing, where you can have this massive range of Siamese fighting fish in a relatively small space. However, when we were setting up this room, we decided that we wanted to keep our Siamese fighters in maybe not the biggest aquariums, but we wanted to keep them in at least a livable and sustainable space. As I said, we don't have the biggest turnover of some of the chain stores that we have in London, but we try and give our fish a quality of life that I feel like a lot of other places can't manage. So we have Siamese fighting fish tanks where they will have about 15 to 20 liters each, with plants and good filtration, individual heaters, and we're able to monitor them in a way that if, God forbid, anything happens and anything gets sick, again, we can treat them and give them the time and respect that the animal needs. And because of that, we're able to keep some really stunning Siamese fighting fish. We've currently gotten this snow white bluefin, which might be my favorite Siamese fighter we've ever had. It's a placat species, and I think that we've done extraordinarily well with keeping our fighters the way we have. It is a lot of work keeping aquariums individually filtered. It does mean there's a significant increase in the amount of testing we need to do and the amount of work we need to do, but I genuinely feel like it's worth it. And now that we've had the room set up for a fair few months now, and we've got over the teething issues of the initial process, we're at a point where I feel like we've genuinely got a room where not only can we sell out of happily, but we can keep fish in a way that we can be proud of. However, up here above our Siamese fighting and shrimp space, we are going to have some new aquariums soon, because we were debating how we wanted to keep this space. And as you can see, we have some dry setups of just an aquarelle shrimp set and obviously some really beautiful pieces of wood. We didn't know exactly what we wanted to do, if we wanted to have just dry setups, aquascaped pieces, or if we wanted to increase our shrimp range. I think what we've decided on is we're going to have shrimp tanks up here where we can have a more extensive range of Neocaridina, potentially some Cardina. We do have RO capability here, and obviously if you've been following any of the videos, I'm trying to breed Musura Cardina shrimp at the moment. So hopefully at some point in the future, we will be having a more extensive range of Neocaridina. We do have Neocaridinas in at the moment. We keep yellow, blues, reds, and sometimes green jade shrimp. However, that's in the old space that we use as a quarantine area. And we want to be able to bring them in here and have everything more in keeping. And then once the old space has been decommissioned and we have a new room set up and a new quarantine area set up, then we'll have a more in keeping environment here, because Pond Life's a little bit different and Tropical Fish London's a little bit different, where we have rooms scattered around a courtyard with koi carp and goldfish in it. I will be showing all of our outdoor fish, particularly when we get into the season. We have previously specialized largely only in outdoor fish. We didn't have this space or aquariums to a large extent like we do now. However, it's always been a passion of mine and my dad's. My dad's been keeping fish for over 50 years. I've been keeping them for over 20 years now. So we have a real passion for the hobby. We've got real passion, both indoor and outdoor fish. And we're really proud of what we're making here. We're really proud of how it's all coming off. So on to the next section. So now for probably our smallest section, and it does need a little bit of a service. Although this does have algae on the front of the glass, this was literally serviced a few days ago. Every single one of our aquariums is on a 3 to 4 day cycle where we will do testing and minor water changes on every aquarium that has a fish in it. Not because that's necessarily the best way to keep aquariums in general, but because we do quite heavily stock. And I know that's going to sound ridiculous when you look at how scarcely some of the aquariums are stocked in comparison to a lot of other stores. However, we feel like it's important to keep our parameters and our fish as happy as absolutely possible. So these are going to get a little bit of a clean today, but we have our Australian species, so rainbow fish. We try and keep them as healthy as possible. We also have down here some peacock gudgeon, which again, not the most common fish on planet Earth, but thankfully everything's looking really happy and healthy. Today it should just be a basic filter clean, and in our second to last section, we have our South American species. We have a really stunning selection of South American species. We try and individually name every single one of ours. We know that some shops will just have a blanket name of South American cichlid, and they will try and stock as many as possible because that's usually how you will stock South American cichlids, particularly Lake Malawi's, where you kind of just have to overstock and hope that territories are found. We try, as you can see, to give our fish as many hidey species as possible. Obviously, in a home aquarium, you'd love that to be rocks and things that are more natural. However, we need to be able to easily catch out of here. So everything is ornamentation, which we make sure isn't going to hurt the fish. But it is really easy for us to remove, and it's really easy for us to put back once we've caught out of here. This is probably the most maintenance heavy aquarium that we have. We have to really keep on top of the water changes and the filter cleaning, because if anyone keeps Lake Malawi's, you know how difficult it is to keep on top of their waste. They are a messy species, and because you have to keep so many of them, you have to really keep on top of how often you're doing water changes. But I'm happy to say we've had very little issues with this tank. We've had very good feedback on the different species we keep. And yeah, I'm really proud of how everything's going. We do have a little bit of crossover here, unfortunately, just because we didn't have the space when they came in, where we had some cuckoo catfish, which I'm pretty sure are South African. However, I will check that and I'll put that on screen now if I was wrong. They should have ended up in Africa, but we didn't have the space. And although we could have very easily overstocked an aquarium and people probably wouldn't have noticed. We didn't want to do that. We try as much as possible not to overstock aquariums here. We try and keep our aquariums as happy and healthy as possible. And wherever we can avoid it, we will try and spread out fish as much as possible so that we don't run into overstocking issues. Sometimes that means we have to break our policies of continent by continent, but if that means that one fish can have an aquarium that is much more suitable than if you shove it in with a whole other bunch of species that it just won't get along with, or there's just not enough space for them in that aquarium, we'd much rather give them the space and give them the quality of life that's necessary and be able to sell them on to our customers in the best possible state they can be in. And finally, we have our big tanks, effectively. They don't necessarily have a continent that they're a part of, although at the moment it seems to be skewing more towards Amazonian species and such, where we have angelfish, uaru, and discus. At the moment, I'm toying with the idea of us turning this discus aquarium into more of a blackwater setup, largely because I think it will give the discus a better quality of life. That is the only reason why we'll be doing it. Obviously, keeping water crystal clear would probably be better for sales overall. However, I think, although these are hard water-bred discus, I think that just having those tannins in the water will make them happier. They're already happy, and we feed them with a mixture of dry and frozen food. As I've probably nailed home far too hard in this video, we genuinely try and keep our fish as happy and healthy as possible here, and we use the extent of our knowledge that we have to try and do so. And I feel like our discus in particular would enjoy a much darker water or black water aquarium. So that's what we'll be implementing in the next few days. You don't want to be shifting over water chemistry that quickly. You can run into issues if you really dramatically change the water chemistry of an aquarium overnight. So we'll be slowly adding in more botanicals to try and soften the water, add in some more tannins, and we'll see if that changes the behavior on our discus. This is the aquarium that we set the Fluval FX series up on, and it's been great. I know there's been a few people who are saying that I don't understand how flow works on filters because I put lava rock around the outside of the filter. It's been absolutely fine. It's been absolutely fine, and these are quite messy fish. I'm going to be giving it a clean today, possibly not opening the whole thing. I might do, just to see how it looks. However, I don't think it's strictly necessary. I'll probably just do a water change and a sponge filter clean, and then give them some frozen food, and that'll be it. I think finally, the only thing to talk about is our plant range, where we don't have the largest selection of plants on planet Earth. However, I do think we have a team of people that really care about taking care of their plants. So to put it in perspective, we haven't had a plant order in a fair few weeks at this point. And usually at that point, plants would be looking a little bit ropey. They probably wouldn't be looking the healthiest they possibly could, but I'm really proud to say that we have a fantastic team here at Pond Life Aquatics, and they take really good care of the plants. They genuinely care about how they look. They understand that keeping a happy and clean plant tank with regular water changing and making sure that things aren't melting is extraordinarily important. We don't get the most regular change of plants over that I know a lot of stores manage. We do manage to keep our plants alive in what I feel like is a pretty unique way, where we sell plants that, although a lot of plants come in grown terrestrially from different suppliers, we are thankfully able to transition from that melting period into selling plants that are truly aquatically grown and are not just being sold directly on, but we are selling plants that are thriving to our customers. And again, it's something that I'm quite proud of here. And although things aren't absolutely perfect, and I'm not trying to say that we are the greatest aquarium that's ever existed, there are obviously people who have a lot more space and a lot more variety and would probably argue they're keeping their fish as well as we are. I feel like, particularly at the moment, we've got a team of people that really care our shop and care about the species and the plants and everything that we're doing, and I'm genuinely very proud of it as a business. So that's it for this week. I'm sorry this was a little bit different, and I'm sorry if my clarity of thought wasn't absolutely spot on. I hope it gives you an idea of the type of company we are and the passion that we have for keeping fish and trying to keep them in the absolute best possible way we can. This is going to be an extraordinarily exciting year for us here at Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London. We're going to be expanding. We're going to be doing things even better than we already are. We're always trying to expand our knowledge. We're always learning new things, always trying to keep at the forefront of the industry and understanding of keeping tropical fish and trying to impart that onto our customers. Here's to a happy and healthy new year. Let me know in the comments if you think we're doing a good job here at Pond Life Aquatics and if there's anything you think we can be improving on. I hope that I will see you all again many more times in 2025. And when we look back on how the fish room is looking and all our other species that we'll hopefully be keeping at that time, we'll be able to look back and see how far we've come. So I will see you again next week when you join me for this Pond Life.